A few months after I made my critique of The Third Birthday, gosh, that was a while ago, a fellow who goes by Dramatic Crossroad on YouTube commented telling me he was making a Parasite Eve fan game. I was intrigued, and he ended up sending me a copy of the alpha build to play and share my thoughts on. Now, 7 months later, I'm finally doing it. Sorry for the wait, buddy. Here's my critique of Parasite Eve, Inquiline Rebellion. Although he called this the alpha build, it might be better to think of it as a demo. It's basically the first level of the game. I know this kind of RPG doesn't technically have levels, but you know what I mean. You explore an area, pick up some items, solve a simple puzzle or two, culminating in a boss battle and some sweet loot. I explored the areas that were available pretty thoroughly, so let me break down the experience and share what I thought were stronger and weaker aspects of the game, at least based on what was playable so far. The game opens with a cutscene where Aya narrates, explaining the events of the first two games in text format over some partially animated frames and her silhouette. It's obviously limited by the hardware, but it's surprisingly effective. You can just skip this part, which you might want to do if you've played the first two games, but it's actually pretty well written and presented. It also makes it clear that this is an alternate continuity that is ignoring the events of the Third Birthday.
I never tire of seeing your exquisite overdive technique. Huh?
But now, I can't go back to the past.
Always a good decision. After that, there's a scrolling wall of text setting up the game's plot. This text can't be skipped, only sped up, which was a little annoying when starting the game up again. However, according to a note at the end of the text, this is just a placeholder for a more proper cutscene, so it'll be interesting to see what that ends up looking like. The setup for Inquiline Rebellion is that Aya is still working for Mist from the second game, and has been sent with a team to investigate a hidden laboratory suspected of experimenting with neo-mitochondrial creatures. Unfortunately, the front entrance was rigged to explode when they tried to enter it, resulting in Aya being trapped inside and the rest of the team trapped outside. How convenient. Another Mist member, Pierce Carradine, snuck into the lab through a back door before the bombs went off and also ended up trapped. So now he and Aya have met up and need to figure out how to get out of the lab, as well as completing their mission of investigating and eliminating any neo-mitochondrial creatures they come across before those creatures can escape and harm anyone. If you think this all sounds very Resident Evil-like, that's exactly what I thought too. The feeling becomes even stronger after a conversation with Pierce, where the two suggest that the bombing might mean there's a mole in Mist, since whoever runs the lab knew you were coming. Personally, I suspect Pierce. I mean, there's no other character to suspect at this point. The whole business of him sneaking through a back door, is suspicious, and there's a bit where you can find a cell phone and he encourages you not to let the boss know he's there. Yeah, I feel pretty confident in calling this one. Confession. I actually played the game and recorded this whole video without remembering that Pierce Carradine is actually a character in Parasite Eve 2. It doesn't really change much. I still think his actions in this game are suspicious, and that it would be a pretty effective twist if he was the mole. It would have a bit more punch because he was in PE2, but it's not like he's a fan-favorite character or anything. He's just random Mist Agent number 1 who occasionally helps out and needs to be saved at one point. And I forgot about him. Anyway, like I said, very Resident Evil style plot, and very simple. I don't really have an issue with that. The second game's plot was very Resident Evil-like too. It's nothing special, it does feel a bit generic, but at least it's better than...
Your sister Eve is dead. Her soul wanders through the gaps of time.
This incident was the cause that triggered the growth of the surrounding Babels. According to my calculations, if they are correct, the core, the mother, or what they call the queen, has actually now been awakened, sir.
Eve is the mother?
High ones, we were there. The moment Eve Brea awakened. Yes, you are Eve Brea. Time zero is when you dove into Aya's body, and that is when your memory was taken from you.
That. The environments, and admittedly there are only 2 distinct environments in this little alpha build demo, are kind of bland. The ground floor offices are gray with a grid pattern floor, a lot of crates, some broken stuff, and not much going on visually. The basement amps up the atmosphere, reminding you that this is supposed to be a horror game. The music is more atmospheric, the textures look darker and dingier, there's blood on things, broken cages, but again, it's rather generic. Like the plot, I don't hate the visual presentation, but it's nothing special. The monsters and locations are adequate. Now, combat and gameplay mechanics. Here's where I was really pleasantly surprised. First, though, I have a major complaint about how these mechanics are introduced. In the first room of the game, the mechanics and goals are shared through manuals. And these manuals, if you decide to read them, go on, and on, and on, and on, and on, and on, and you get the idea. They also capture the feeling of a technical manual very accurately, in that they're written in a very dry, dull way. Now, I'm no Aaron Hansen.
Oh yeah, cool. I'll just throw it.
Neat.
Throw it, not what I wanted to do, but...
You did it.
How come there's not like a thing that's like...
Just drop it?
If it's trying to be so helpful.
And I tried to read the instructions so I'd know what I was doing, but after a certain point, I physically could not bring myself to read any more. This is some of the first stuff you come across in the first room of the game, and it is not a good first impression. Let's look at the original game. That game had tons of exposition. The 2 scientist characters, Dr. Maeda and Dr. Clamp, were basically there just to deliver exposition. They gave full-blown science lessons to the character that lasted for a very long time. The reason it worked is because those exposition scenes were doing double duty. In addition to explaining the plot, introducing goals, and game mechanics, they also provided insight into the characters doing the explaining. Dr. Maeda and Dr. Clamp were 2 distinct, well-fleshed-out characters, and over the course of their exposition-heavy scenes, we got to see Dr. Maeda's natural timidness contrasted with his heroism, and we got to see Dr. Clamp's gradual descent into megalomaniacal insanity. Spoilers. This made the scenes engaging. Dramatic Crossroad is able to write decent dialogue. Aya, like I said before, feels in character, and like in other games, she's a compelling and likable character. Even though we don't know much about Pierce, he also has some personality and seems interesting. Why not have Pierce deliver some of this exposition and show off a bit more of his personality in the process? It'll make the exposition a lot more entertaining and less painful, and will also give it a bigger impact later when Pierce inevitably turns on Aya. Yeah, I'm still on that. Also, the exposition is too front-loaded. Not everything needs to be explained to the player right at the start of the game. For instance, there's a whole section in the manual on weapons mods, and near as I can figure out, you can't actually use weapon mods yet in the game. I collected a few mod ships, but to actually use them for anything, I needed to get them evaluated, which as far as I can tell, I have no way to do. So why not leave a manual explaining weapon mods in or right before the area where the player actually gains the ability to have them evaluated and then use them? That way, it's a nice bite-sized chunk of game mechanic exposition, instead of walls and walls of text. Yeah, break this up a bit, turn some of it into dialogue that shows off characters' personalities. That's my advice. Because as it is, I think a lot of people will skip this, and some may quit the game entirely because of it. Which is a shame, because the RPG mechanics in Inquiline Rebellion are surprisingly good. Considering it's an RPG Maker game styled like an old-school top-down RPG, and you control only a single character, I was a bit skeptical going in. But once I played around with all the options, I found that it has a surprising amount of depth. First, let's talk about the weapons. Your main weapon is a gun. Each gun has an ammo capacity that's tracked during combat. You reload automatically between combat, but if you empty your gun during combat, you have to spend a round reloading before you can shoot again. You start off the game with a 9mm pistol. It's a basic single-shot attack. But by exploring a bit, you can quickly find a machine pistol. It has the same ammo capacity and uses the same ammo as your starter pistol, but with it you can fire a single shot or a 3-round burst. The burst fire can still only target a single enemy, and each shot does less damage individually than single shot, but combined they do a fair bit more damage. Also, 3 shots means that even if one of your shots misses, you still deal some damage to the enemy. The trade-off is that you run out of ammo faster in combat and have to reload more. The machine pistol was my main weapon for most of the playthrough. Since it's a one-handed weapon, I could equip a melee weapon on the other hand, and the only option available in the demo version of this game is a stun gun Pierce gives you a short ways in. It's actually really useful. Maybe a little too useful. An attack with the stun gun does a bit less damage than a single shot from the pistol, but it also paralyzes whatever it hits for a single round. The stun gun can only be used every other round and only has 10 uses before it needs to be taken back to Pierce to be recharged. But the ability to paralyze an enemy for a round is extremely powerful. And even though they're some of the first weapons you get in the game, the machine gun pistol and stun gun seem like a pretty powerful combo, especially since 9mm ammo was plentiful. Maybe creatures later in the game will be immune to paralysis, so the stun gun won't be so effective, I don't know. The last two weapons in the Inquiline Rebellion Alpha are a shotgun and a grenade launcher. You can only get these weapons after killing the boss monster, so the game, at least this version, is pretty much over by then. But of course, I had to wander around and get some encounters in to test these guns out. The grenade launcher is exactly as awesome as it should be. It has to be loaded before every shot, but it hits every enemy on screen, and you can choose from 3 different types of grenades. Standard grenades are just really powerful. Riot grenades are a bit less powerful, but cause status effects, and airburst grenades, well, I can't say what they do because I didn't get any. Presumably, they're really good against flying enemies that will be in a later complete version of the game. The shotgun, on the other hand, was surprisingly disappointing. It fired 3 shots, but unlike the machine pistol that always hit the target you aimed at, or the grenade launcher that always hit everything on the screen, the shotgun's hits seemed to be randomized, which is more annoying than useful. Also, it was surprisingly weak. I wasn't expecting it to be as powerful as the grenade launcher, but when your shotgun is doing less damage than your pistol, with less than half the ammo capacity, something is wrong. I ran out of ammo completely while using the shotgun, which is how I learned that you can't switch weapons during combat. I'm not sure if this is due to the game's unfinished state, or if it's supposed to be like this. But if it's supposed to be this way, no, change it. I don't like it. Being locked into whatever weapon you have equipped means you either have to risk wasting all your rare and valuable ammo for your more powerful weapon on any random encounter you might stumble into when you have it equipped, or you can just not use your rarer guns at all. The grenade launcher and shotgun are also two-handed weapons, so you already have to give up the stun gun to use them. If you run out of ammo, like I did with the shotgun, you better hope you have enough MP to kill your enemies or you'll be screwed, locked in a combat where you can't fight back. Overall, I really liked the weapons. They all had mechanics that made them feel very distinct from each other with different strengths and weaknesses, and all were useful and felt right for the type of weapon they were, with the exception of the unusually wimpy shotgun. Now to get into MP, which I just mentioned. MP stands for Mitochondria power, and it's magic. I mean, if you've played the original games, you know there's a sci-fi explanation for mitochondria power, but functionally, it works very similar to how you'd expect magic to work in an RPG Maker game. The bar it drains to use powers is even called MP for crying out loud. Same initials. With MP, you can attack enemies, boost the attack power of your normal weapon or other mitochondria attacks, inflict status ailments, and even turn into Aya's funky super form from the first game. Actually, that ability is called Liberation, and it uses its own separate meter that fills up when Aya attacks or gets attacked in combat. When the meter fills to 100, the power becomes available, and activating it makes all of Aya's other powers a lot stronger. It's pretty cool and mostly pretty standard for old school RPG magic. How you get and level up the powers is a little interesting, though. Enemies you kill will occasionally drop items called samples. You can take these back to the lab room Pierce is in, use one machine to extract ingredients from them, and use another machine to combine those ingredients into It's all done with the power of chemistry. When you have enough compounds, you can purchase and upgrade powers with them. You can also equip up to 3 compounds, which give you a bit of a stat boost in various areas depending on what type of compound they are. So that opens up a bunch more options for you to upgrade Aya with during gameplay. I was surprised and impressed by the amount of depth to the character customization and weapon options, and weapon mods aren't even available yet. I was actually disappointed after I explored the other rooms after killing the boss monster and realized there wasn't really any more of the game left to play, because I was getting into the RPG elements so much. That is a very good sign the game is doing something right. A couple of final notes. There is a puzzle in the game to open one of the doors. Like the plot and graphics, I didn't particularly like or hate it. It's not too difficult to figure out, it's just kinda there. This version of the game doesn't seem to have a save function. This took me so off guard, I was sure I must be missing something, but as near as I can figure out, no. Despite the continue option on the main screen, there's no way to save your game. You have an exit to the main menu option, and that's it. I guess in that sense, it's good that it's only a fairly short part of the beginning. The game also doesn't seem to run the greatest. It didn't lag or anything, but my laptop gets really hot when it plays this. Now, my laptop is hardly an optimized gaming machine, but I've played RPG Maker games on it for a couple hours at a time with no problem before. I play this game for 20 minutes, I have to put it in sleep mode to cool off because I'm worried it's going to shut down from the heat. I'm not versed enough in programming to know what's causing this, but definitely try to fix it if you can figure it out, DC. I do like the little descriptive bits in the game. It seems like a standard thing, but I've played RPG Maker games where they skimped on this, where you didn't get any descriptions for trying to examine anything unless it was plot important. And it definitely made the games feel a bit more incomplete and empty, even when the environments were otherwise quite nice looking. There's just something satisfying about going up to something and pushing a button and getting a description for your efforts, even if the description is just, the drawer is empty. Also, some of these bits helped flesh out the world and make me like it a bit more. Like when I first encountered the boss monster in the basement room with all the animal cages, I just thought it was some generic flush golem thing. But if you examine the cage to the left of where you find the key in the room, it says there's a dead mutated chimpanzee in there that's tail and leg has fused together. I was like, oh, that's what that is. Or this little bit in another room where you can try to use a phone, but it won't make calls outside. And a note on it says that the phone has been restricted due to Jeff making off-site calls to his girlfriend. And then Aya says, thanks a lot, Jeff. Little touches like that really help give the game a personality. To summarize, Parasite Eve Inquiline Rebellion is an old-school top-down RPG with surprisingly good combat and character customization for the tools it was made with. The story, what little of it I could see, plays it a bit safe, but stays true to the first two games in the series. The plot, environments, and sprite work are okay, and the dialogue is good. It needs a working save function, the shotgun needs to be stronger, the game could stand to run a little better, and the exposition at the beginning needs to be reduced and made more entertaining. But of course, all this is based on the small part of the game I could actually play so far. Considering this is an alpha, I think it shows a lot of promise, and I'll definitely check out the completed version when or if it's released. If you want to give the game a try, I don't know, maybe you can message Dramatic Crossroad or something. As always, like if you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. Have a great day, everyone.